Okay, week two, we are looking at the process of interviewing as our discussion. And I just wanted to go through that. I have already posted some things about interviews. So I would like you to look at this and think about it, because in reality, the um, interviews follow a general pattern. Um, After your intro, you'll be asked some questions and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. You'll also be given an opportunity often in these things. They'll sort of intersperse with, do you have any questions about something? And that's your opportunity. You should always have questions to ask. If you have no questions, it shows a lack of preparation or a lack of interest in the job. That either one of them may be a false impression, okay? But if you don't do that, if you don't have questions, that's the conclusion the interviewer is likely to draw. So you should always come in with some. They don't have to be, you don't have to come in with 50 questions and pepper the interviewer with question after question after question. But what you want to do is have some things when you walk in the door that you would like to know. And if the interviewer covers many of those topics, the one of the ways you can show that you've thought about it is you can say, well, I was gonna, you've answered a lot of my questions about, and then you can just say, the duties, the structure of the company, whatever it is they've answered that you may have been going to ask, but always have something else you can fall back on to ask a question, because they really want that. The questions that you receive, there's a list of 20 questions here. They are not the only possible questions you can be asked. Okay? Depending on the interviewer, and I've had some interviewers that were kind of oddball and have asked definitely oddball questions that are just sort of, my first reaction is, where on earth did that come from? Because it had nothing to do with, in my opinion, with the job being discussed. So people will ask oddball questions, and sometimes they do that just to get you off balance and see how you respond. And other times just because people are strange. And they will do that sort of thing. So the question that I have that you should always ask yourself is how would I deal with questions? This list of 20 questions is a good list. And there are obviously, as I say, a lot more, but there are also many variations on every question. So the object here is to just, if you go into an interview, my suggestion is that you have a list, that you just review this list of questions that we give you, and any others you can think of that you may have been asked in interviews. And just look at that and set your mind on that. If you've actually looked at this, I'll guarantee you what happens with the brain. Brains are absolutely fascinating. What happens with the brain if you read down that list of questions, even if you're not specifically saying, well, how am I going to answer number 7? Your brain is going to be working on that. And so you'll be a lot more prepared. And especially if you've thought about some of these things, and many of them are important questions. What motivates you? Well, there are some pat answers to that. And then there are some more personalized answers. What motivated me to go to college, for instance? I'm just going to use myself as an example here. What motivated me to go to college was that no one in my family had ever gone. My family was full of very intelligent people who didn't have the opportunity. World War II, among other things, interfered with most of my older family members achieving an education. So what motivated me was looking at what they could have done had they gone and gotten more education. And that's what motivated me to want to go to college. That, and from the day I was born, my father talked about me going to college. So I heard it all my life. So it was not even a question. Are you going to college? It was only, are you going to go to college right at the end of high school, or are you going to take a little time off? That was the only question. You know, do you plan to continue your education? This is a question that I wanted to point out. Any question that can be answered yes or no needs to be elaborated. Do you plan to continue your education? Yes, I do. I want to work for a couple of years and then go back and get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or an RN or something like that. But make it clear that you are thinking about going on. If you say no, you better have a reason for not wanting to. Are you going to be asked that question? Who knows? All of these questions are possible. The questions that, you know, what is it about you that makes me want to hire you? There's lots of ways to asking that question. Some of them are pretty blunt, and some of them are a little bit asked in reverse. But you should think about this. In your textbook, which I have a hard copy here, and although they don't like me to say this at the upper levels, if you want a copy, talk to Nate. We got copies, plenty of them on the shelf, and we'll be happy to loan you a copy of the book. We're lucky in that when they changed the way they structured these courses, they kept the same book for this course. But in chapter 11, there's a whole lot of suggested answers to these questions. And there's even more questions. So I would suggest you've got the online version of the text. You can see if there's a way you can print that chapter. I would put this just sort of in your tickler file to remind you how to do this. I mean, after you've done as many interviews as some of us have done, you probably don't need that reminder list. But when you're first starting out, you know, your first interview is almost always something that makes you nervous, and that's everybody. And so, what you want to do in order to deal with nervousness in an interview situation is preparation. And then you find out at the end that it wasn't so bad after all. You know, because when you're prepared, you're able to walk in and just, you know, once you get past the intros and the butterflies are gone and everything else, you really settle down and it becomes a conversation. The other part is, you know, asking questions. And again, there is there are some suggested questions in here as well. So I would really consider that. The interview is your best place to make the impression on an interviewer that says to the interviewer, hire this person. You know, your paperwork, I mean, everybody, to be honest, everybody who goes through a class like this or has some help with resumes and cover letters is going to have a good resume and a good cover letter. But what happens is that when you walk in for the interview, you know, you're gonna make an impression immediately. And there's a couple of things that I have added that I'm going to point out about interviewing later on. A couple of things I've been adding to the class that help you with that first impression. And a lot of it has to do with body language and how you appear. Body language, according to some research that's available, is part of the nonverbal part of communication. We all know that there's the words, whether they're spoken or written or anything else, and then there's the nonverbal, what we call paralanguage. The nonverbal ranges from how you sit in the chair to the expression in your voice when you speak. You can always tell when somebody's angry. You can hear it in their voice. Most people, even when they're angry, don't have enough control to modulate their voice. Even when they try, it comes through because it's partially involuntary. And it says a lot about you. Now, I'm not talking about the difference between, a stage actor who's always out there, ta-da! Look at me, I'm great. And the other personality that's quieter and doesn't project that sort of stage presence that is required for someone who wants to be a performing artist. That does not, but that's not bad. There's nothing, that's not a bad thing. It's just different. So when so that will tell people a lot about who you are, just how you come across. The other thing in interviews, practice things like an elevator pitch, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Practice smiling during an interview. You don't have to always have this big grin on your face, looking like you're stoned or something. But practice that. There are plenty of times when you just need to have some facial expressions that make people really feel positive, and a smile will do that more than anything else. Most people, when they smile, they light up. When they smile genuinely, they light up. And now we always like to see that in the workplace. We like people that can make us feel good just seeing them. And so you just practice that sort of thing. Practice it with family, practice it with friends, practice it with your puppy. I don't care. Puppies respond well, always. But, practice this. We had some new people who just moved into Loveland. We had them and their 2.5-year-old daughter at our house yesterday afternoon for dinner. And they came to us because mutual friends had said, these guys just moved from North Carolina, where we lived for 20 years. These guys just moved from North Carolina and they need to know some people. So we invited them over. And their little girl came in, and like most kids, she was sort of, at 2.5, you're a little, these are strangers. Who are they? By the time she left, she was a chatterbox. She was just fun, and she relaxed, and was like many kids at that age, turned into the life of the party. But there's just the way you come across. So you need to practice on these things for an interview, and it's never too soon to start that. The other thing is the questions you ask. There, again, are no set rules except one. Never ask about salary in an interview. And the reason you don't, unless they bring it up. You don't want to look like you're only interested in the money. Okay. So we don't want to see that question asked. Now, as I say, they may bring it up. They may say, this job pays, X dollars an hour. You interview at some place like you know, like a retail outlet. You work for Once Upon a Child. Yeah, I was thinking Plato's Closet. No. Once Upon a Child. Yeah. Yeah. So you work for, and there they just pay a flat salary, and then is there a commission that goes with it? You get so it's just a flat salary. So that's what they pay. So it's going to be a take it or leave it kind of situation, because they're not going to negotiate on something like that. However, if someone asks you a silly question like, what would you like to be paid? You need to be prepared to answer that question. And that's really the topic of this week's assignment, which is the company itself. And we'll come back to that in a bit. That's a question to avoid answering. What is your standard range for this position? You know, because what you don't want to do is if their standard range for a position is $18 to $22 an hour, just pick two numbers. And somebody says, well, what do you want to be paid? Well, I want at least $16 an hour. Well, that's what you'll get as an offer.
Because that's the rule.
Yeah.
You're saving them money. That's
right. But if you say, I want $30 an hour, you're just, sorry, we can't afford you. So it really is a question that is inappropriate for you to ask. It's also, in my opinion, inappropriate for an employer to ask. Now, and then we're talking about the positions, these career beginning positions that you guys are in. If you were interviewing for an executive position, you would give them a number because you would know what their standard pay scale is. And how do you do that? Well, that's where we come up with how we come up with our questions that we ask them. And that is company research, because the assignment this week, let's go into the week's assignment. The week 2 assignment is to research the company. Now, using APA requirements for papers, write a 5-page paper on the company. I do not adhere to that five-page thing real strongly. Sometimes you don't have 5 pages of information. Other times, your difficulty will be keeping it to 5 pages because it's a big company, lots of information. But what you want to do is go to their website, look for newspaper articles, do a web search. I don't care which web search engine you use, doesn't matter. They all pretty much return the same information. Then if you have any other source of information, friends working for the organization that you can talk to, get information. But the object here is that you want to know the company, okay? So we can look at this. What are the company values and culture, and how does that align with your own? I mean, if you were looking at a company that thought it was just fine to steal all the information off Facebook about potential clients, you might not want to work for them. That might not align with your own values and morals. So, know that ahead of time. Look for this. Look for all of these. Look for, if it's a publicly traded company, the amount of information you're going to find will be thousands of pages. Don't bog yourself down. Go to the company website. Go to newspaper articles. Go to, and I mean major, for larger companies. Around here, you're looking at companies that are fairly local. So, you can do a search of the local newspapers. Most of them are available online, and you can at least read the articles. But look at what the company does. and answer some questions. What concerns might you have working for this company? If you find out that they have a tremendous turnover rate, you might ask yourself, what's going on? Why do they have so many people? Why is it such a revolving door? Again, if it depends on the kind of organization you're talking about. Retail is a revolving door because people, when they're very young, and I don't mean very young in a negative way. Everyone in this room is very young compared to me. So that's a perspective issue. When they're young and when they are looking for additional income after they've retired, those are the people that are going to work in those situations. As soon as the young people get finished with their education, go on, find a better job, they're gone. That's legitimate. So you don't worry about turnover in retail or in fast food or any of those things. But if it's a company that ought to be relatively stable, such as a medical practice, and you see that the same job has been posted 6 times in the last 2 years. The question you ask is, are they expanding, and is that they're just adding staff, or are they static, and are they just losing staff that fast? So these kinds of questions you want to look at. Why is it that way? Just any other questions. This approach can result in you coming up with a list of questions that you want to ask an interviewer. And don't worry, this assignment or the discussion this week says 3 to 5 questions you want to ask an interviewer. Come up with a longer list for your own use of questions that you might want to ask this company. And this is something you should do for every company you interview for. Searching for a job is a job in itself. And so you need to invest the time to understand the people you're interviewing with, as well as the company you're interviewing with, as well as working on your own resume and cover letter and other documentation. But other suggestions, if you are interested you should also go into every interview with an idea of the pay scale in this locality for the kind of position you're applying for. That all comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a Department of Labor division that publishes employment information, and it publishes salary information, publishes a lot, and it's all on a regional basis. So you should go in, just in case the interviewer does ask you that question, well, what do you want to be paid? You can say, well, I understand that the range for this position in this area is X to Y, and pick a number in the middle. Understanding that as a first job, you may end up on the lower end of that scale. But that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting a value on your services. I know so many people that say, oh, that makes me sound greedy to want to be in the middle of a range when I'm just starting out. No, it's putting a value on your services and a value on yourself. They can always say, well, no, we start people at, Then you have another data point. If that number is way below what you can find acceptable, then, thank you very much for letting me know. And then you can determine whether or not, ultimately, that will work for you. Because there's more. Toward the end of the class, I'm going to give you some links to salary negotiation tools and information about negotiating salaries, because that's really critical. I mean, you do need to have a decent salary, and it should be based on not just the position, but also the what is reasonable in the area. But there are lots and lots of places. There are LinkedIn. If you are not a part of LinkedIn, we haven't talked much about social media yet. We will, but if you're not a part of LinkedIn, I suggest you go ahead and put a profile on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is free, and it is specifically designed for professionals, which all of you will be when you graduate. Will be considered professionals. So it's specifically designed for them. And LinkedIn is also a networking site. It's a way of really finding out who's hiring, because a lot of people will put hiring information or job posting information on their LinkedIn company site. Now, a company site costs money. An individual site is free. So I would suggest you do that. And check it regularly, because it's interesting. You'd be surprised who you know that's already there. It's worth doing. So I suggest you go ahead and do the LinkedIn. So I will tell you that, as I said, there's a 5-page suggestion here. I'm not going to be hard-nosed about 5 pages, but it needs to be more than just a page. You need at least 2 pages of information. I would suggest aim for 4, because almost anyone you can find that much information, especially if you expand your search past what's on the website for the company to where it's appeared in the local media. You may even find some YouTubes of news broadcasts about this. So there's just plenty of places you can go to find this information. And again, one of the reasons I want to do that in this class is that you should do this for every single company you apply for. And it's gotten so much easier than it used to be to get this information. If it's not that I think right now any of you are going to be applying to publicly traded companies, but if it's a publicly traded company, there's a tremendous amount of information that the Securities and Exchange Commission demands be published. Annual reports, quarterly reports, all sorts of things that you can obtain that are public record. So there's and if it's a public company, you're going to find a lot more information. You may want to look for a company that's been around. You may want to look and see if there's some sort of forum that people have established, maybe a blog from people to see what they have to say about the company. Again, that's more likely with a large public company than most people that would be working in private businesses here in this area. But you never can tell. A web search, you do a Google search, you get 85,000 hits, and you're not going to scroll through 8,500 pages of 10 hits a page to look for this company. But when you do a web search, don't just limit yourself to the top couple of pages. Look through at least 3 or 4 pages of information. After that, it gets kind of wonky, but just look for it and look for specific kinds of information. Obviously, the company website, that's the fastest way to find a website, is to do a web search. If the company has a website, it'll pop up. Unless you happen to know their URL already. The the other thing is that a web search will turn up very quickly things like newspaper articles and other kinds of information. So look for look for it also, I think, can turn up LinkedIn profiles, because one of the parameters of a LinkedIn profile is where are you working. And in your guy's case, is going to be going to school, and you might write down once upon a child as well. But the thing is that you'll find some sidelines that you can investigate. So play with that. It's due at the end of the week, and what I'd like you to do is at least get a draft done by the end of the week, so that we can look at that and learn something about the company. Make sure that you follow APA format, all the other stuff on that. Questions?
Does it have to be the, I know it's smart to choose the one that you're applying for, but we can do another one.
If you decide to do that, let's talk about it. I would rather you, because you're part of this is because you are writing your application, your resume and cover letter as though you're applying to this one company. And I'd like you to concentrate on that, because that really goes back to the stuff we started last week. So, and if there's a reason that doesn't work, let's talk about it. Okay? Yeah. All right. There is an assessment that is available as well, and the assessment really is another bit of writing. Yeah, don't you love it?
Do you want to finish the call?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the idea. That's the idea. What you're going to do is basically discuss why we do this research. Okay? Why we do this research on companies. What's the purpose in it? And so that's what I want you to, and I see someone's already started taking it.
Don't want to hear it. You know I have nothing else going on in my life.
that doesn't bother me in the slightest. I put it up there because I wanted people to look at it. But so that's the two things on tap this week. But I really, there are some other things that are useful to discuss. Let's go back. I want to go to course media, and I will caution you, the chapters that you are supposed to read as listed in course media don't necessarily correspond directly to what we are going to be discussing in the week. So I will try and let you know ahead of time what you should be doing. But in week 2, it really starts into into the concept of networking. Now, networking doesn't appear in your book until chapter 10. So, but what we want to talk about networking, there are some pretty good videos here and some articles because there's some things that are kind of a repeat, from the from last week. But there are some pretty good videos, and I want to go down here toward the end of that week 2 section of course media to a couple of things. One of which is the master application template. The master application template is an Excel spreadsheet, and you just enter a lot of personal information. Since this is on an online platform, don't give personal information like social security number, birth date. Make it up. If you want to give a social security number of 111111111 or all X's, that's fine. You know, that I don't want to see it, and I really don't want it sitting on this platform. We all know that there isn't a single platform on the planet that somebody can't hack into. So I'd rather protect your information. Leave off your date of birth. I probably wouldn't even put address information. You know, and that's just because I get tired of that. Every time you go on to register to use a website, they want all this information, and I think, and at that point, half the time, I just say, well, I don't even want to mess with this website because they don't need that information because all they do is sell it. And that's it. That's it. And as I said before, when we're looking for a job, I actually think it's probably not a bad idea to have a special job search email. That's all it's for. That way you know anything that comes in should be related to that. Now, are you going to get spammed on it? You betcha. Yeah, but yeah, but you know, the thing is, you can always register those domains as spam and have them just automatically be shuttled off to the side. I think there's probably more in my spam box than in my inbox.
Me too.
So periodically I go through and dump it. But there are just a lot of different useful bits of information. The Master app is really the compilation of every kind of information an employer might want at any level. If you were, for instance, if you were applying for a government job, you would put down an awful lot of information you might not put down if you were applying for a job at, say, MCR. And the reason is that many government jobs require security clearance. And when you apply for those, they want to know, God, you know, they want to know everything about you for the last minimally 10 years, if not longer. And so you just want that information at your fingertips. Now, if you're like some people, I remember when in basic training, one of our drill sergeants would have, because we all had to fill out these things. The guy says, now, if you happen to move every time the rent man came, you know, in other words, somebody who moved a lot. I have a friend who worked in the State Department as a medical officer. He's younger than I am. He's moved 38 times in his life.
I'm so
all over the country, all over, not just the country, but all over the world. So, you know, there's extremes. There are the people that move a lot. And, you know, quite frankly, if you've moved a lot because you've been moving from location to location to location in an area like in Loveland or Fort Collins or whatever, that's one thing. But if you've been moving, you know, hither, thither, and yon all over the country, all over the world, you know, you really want to be able to deal with that. Pardon?
Explain why.
Yeah, you do. The other thing, all of your employment, that's where you put every place you've ever worked, including Burger King, including nannying. You probably want to give up on the babysitting that you did as a high school student or a grade school student. But other than that, that's where you want everything you've ever done. And part of that is because most of us forget some of the things we've done because we've worked in a lot of different places, done a lot of different things, and many of us have moved moved a lot, especially when we were younger. I mean, when I was a college student, I had a stint as an electrician. Well, I'm not an electrician, but I worked for 2 electricians, and they taught me a lot, including inappropriate Spanish, unfortunately. That caused a couple of embarrassing situations.
I'm not really trying to say that. That's
Oops. But it was, there are some stories there, but we won't go into those in this class. But the thing that you want is to have a place where you have a compilation of everything you've done, because quite frankly, that's one of the questions you may get asked. What kind of work did you do when you were in high school? And they don't really care what it was.
just so they.
Yeah, they just want to know, are you a worker? Are you someone who's willing to work? I've been a waiter, a bartender. I've dug ditches. I blew up airplanes for a living for a while. Just all these different things. You write them down, and you look at the list. On the other hand, when you're done with it, and you say, "I guess I did a lot of stuff." Yeah, not too bad.
I still have that whole list.
Yeah.
I had to fill it out for the military, and it has all my old addresses, all the wherever I worked, references, like 10 references.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still have that page paper. It's like that thick.
Yeah. I have that file too. Because I had to supply it, and I just said, well, I'll just keep this. It's been following me around. I keep thinking, I don't need this anymore, and then I think, it's just taking up space in a file cabinet that's going to be here anyway.
Yep.
So why not? But it's a good idea. It's a good idea to have, and start keeping a record. Just keep a file. Update, and the other thing about a resume, update it all the time. You should really go back and look at your resume at least once a year. If nothing else, update the dates of your job that you're currently on. But make sure that it's always up to date. And the reason for that, quite frankly, is that you don't know when you're going to want to apply for the next job. And you don't want to have to go back and say, oh my God, it's been 10 years. What am I going to do? How am I going to fill this thing out? Yeah, you got to remember it first, right? So the thing about these is and the Master app is a great document for that. I've got all of my old ones are typed paper because we didn't have computers and stuff. Hello, Layla. Boy, do you rate. Okay. So that's another good reason. If nothing else, update the Master app so that it's easy then to go and update your resume. But I would just urge that once a year you update your resume and make sure you have it. Also, I found out the hard way on this. Also, keep a copy on a jump drive or an SD card or something, just in case your computer decides to go bluey and you lose everything. You don't want to have to recreate any of this stuff if you can help it.
I also have a printed copy.
Printed copies are good.
just in case it
Yep.
said jump drive also disguised. To
Yep,
evaluate
yep.
the state of my life.
They've improved jump drives. My very first jump drive years ago, I made the mistake of dropping and it destroyed it. I lost everything on it.
My mom sucked my old one up in the vacuum.
That would give it a bit of a jolt. So let's go ahead and take our first break, and we'll come back and talk about networking for a while. And then I'll set you guys to work on starting your company research.
And she got mad at me because it broke.
Okay, I've resumed the recording. So I want to talk about networking. Networking is, as I said before, the best way to get a job. Networking is a way to find out about positions that are open, but they're also a way to get into positions and get maybe a little bit of more attention because you've spoken to someone who says, yeah, I'd like to see your application. Job fairs are a great way to do that. So you should always keep an eye out for job fairs. Obviously, you want job fairs that include, at least to some extent, the kinds of profession you're interested in. You don't want to go to a job fair for truck drivers if you want to be a medical assistant, obviously. But the other aspect of networking is that, for instance, essentially every job I've ever had, I've gotten through some form of networking. I've known about an opening or been approached about an opening, and that is what has led to my getting essentially every job I've ever had. Now, the thing about that is, where do you network? Well, you network anywhere and everywhere. Do you know somebody who's working in field? And you just ask them, what do you know about job openings? What job openings are at your place? And always be, when you're doing that, just always be prepared to follow up if someone gives you, if you really are interested in doing anything about that information or with that information. Follow up right away, because job openings don't stay open very long anymore. The other part of that is if you go to any sort of networking event, always carry copies of your resume. Always carry, I really suggest you just have a simple business card made up. And you can buy business card stock at any office supply store. And all that has to have is your name. If you have a certification like an MA certification, you'd put that on there. And contact information, phone number and email. Nothing elaborate. Nothing elaborate. What you want to do is have someone have something in their hand and say, what's this? Oh yeah, I remember meeting that person. And that's what you want. You want a reminder of who you are. As I said, carry resumes to these things, because you may have someone, especially at job fairs, you're going to have people there that are actually recruiting. And they're going to say, do you have a copy of your resume? And you want to be able to pull it out and give it to them on the spot. Always get any company literature that they may have. Recruiters always have company literature with them. Always get copies of that. That's the first part of your research into that company. So you want to get that information. Be willing to ask questions. of the recruiter. It doesn't have to turn into an interview. Just say, you know, what kinds of positions, where are they located, you know, just general information, because you don't want to, if you live in, for instance, Loveland, you may or may not care if there's a job opening in Pueblo. You know, on the other hand, you might have family in Pueblo, and that's fine. We actually, down in Denver, we actually had 2 students who drove up from Pueblo every day. Yeah, it was really amazing. It was really amazing.
It's a long drive.
That's a long drive, but they were really motivated. And ultimately, they started finding other places so they didn't have to drive back and forth every day. But for a while, they were doing that. They were sisters, and they were coming up together. So but the question really is, you want to ask some basic questions, and come away with an idea of what they're looking for. How much experience do you want is required? I mean, if somebody's looking for someone like an MA with 10 years experience, as a new grad, you may or may not be considered. And so if they do say that, you'd say, do you consider new graduates? Because I am graduating next month. I graduated last month, whatever, you know, do you look at new grads? That's a legitimate question, even when they say they want somebody with, everybody wants somebody with experience. I mean, if they can get that, they like it. But also they realize that sometimes they have to just take, you know, they have to be willing to consider someone that may not have all of the qualifications that they're looking for. Usually, when they're looking for someone with a set of qualifications, it's a laundry list of, you know, it may include some must-haves like a college degree, like a certification in some field. But most of that list is going to be, this will be a real bonus if we could get this. So don't be afraid to ask. If someone says, absolutely, you must have this many years experience, leave your resume anyway. It's a minor investment. And if you've made a good impression on that recruiter, they might go back and say, hey, look, I met this really great woman for this job. She doesn't have experience, but I think she'd really fit in. And that might be exactly what you need. You just can't tell. Another place where networking is critical is professional organizations. Every profession has a professional organization of some sort. There are actually, for medical assistants, there are actually 3 or 4 of them. And in the IT, they're all over the place. You know, join them. Join, you know, you may not feel like you can afford to join all of the medical assistant organizations, but join one, because they all, on their websites and other things, they all have who's posting jobs. It's a great way to get a line on jobs that are available. Also, it's a great way, using the organization, to find out about the company, find out where, well, a little more information. What's it like to work for this company? And go to their social events. You know, this is, again, job hunting is a job, and you need to be willing to invest the time and the effort to try. So finding and joining a professional organization. It's Monday, what can I say? Finding and joining a professional organization is also a good way to meet other people who are in field and start getting some idea of what it's like to be working. And then what happens, of course, is that once people get to know you, when there's job openings, they might say, hey, I know this great person. Maybe let's see if they're available or if they're interested. Because I guarantee you the chances of you working in the same job for your entire career are not that high. That used to be the model. You get your education, or you get a job, you spend 30 years on the job, you retire, you get your gold watch, and you draw a pension. That doesn't happen anymore. Things are changing so rapidly that the chances are pretty good that 5 to 10 years from now, you'll be doing something that you never even heard of today, because fields are expanding and changing so rapidly. Or you may get into it and decide, oh, well, I would like to go in a different direction. You may decide, especially if you're an MA, you may decide that you want to get some experience dealing with patients and then go to nursing school and get a BSN and an RN. Well, you may, but all of that is evolution in the workplace. If, however, you love what you're doing and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, God bless you, do it. Stability is also in these fields is also a good thing, but keep up. Continuing education is almost always a requirement in any field, and there's another place. Professional organizations are another place, a good source of continuing education, often at pretty attractive prices. For instance, as you know, my wife's a physical therapist. We've made a decision that even though she's more or less retired, whatever that means, that she's going to maintain her PT license. It's not much money. And one thing is, once you have a license, if you let it go, it's much harder to get it back. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. It's easier to keep it. Well, that requires continuing education. That's the easiest way to maintain a license, is continuing ed. And so by doing continuing education, you also stay current in field. And as I say, one of the things about professional organizations is that they often have structures. For instance, I started off on my wife being a PT. What she has to have 30 hours of CE every 2 years to maintain her license. She has a source through the Physical Therapy Association where she can have, for $99, she can take as many CE units as she wants for a year. That's pretty cheap. If you look at most fields, $99 is the minimum you'll pay for a one-day CEU course. So, look around for these things. Professional organizations are good, not just for networking, but as I say, also for maintaining your whatever licensures you have. So there's a bunch of material here in terms of videos that we have for the talk about networking in LinkedIn, networking on Twitter, social media. LinkedIn is officially a part of the social media space, but it's a little different than things like Facebook or Twitter. Twitter is something I'm only peripherally familiar with. I'm not active on it because I don't figure anybody needs to know what I'm eating for lunch. And I don't want to know what anybody else is eating for lunch. Nor do I care that there's a big traffic backup on I-25 because I stay off I-25 anyway. So, But the issue is that you can Twitter does have some networking functions, because if you can get up with people that are active on Twitter in field, again, it's a good way to notice, because a lot of times I have a friend who works for Coalfire Systems, which is a cybersecurity firm here in Colorado, headquartered right now down in the metro area. And he does a variety of things. He started off life as a contractor, and went on to being a consultant for companies that expand operations. He goes and finds them sites, and he manages the building project for various companies. And he now works for Coalfire, because he actually helped them establish 2 of their facilities around the country, and they've hired him. But he will post on both his Facebook account and his Twitter account when they have a job opening. He's not a hiring manager. He doesn't hire for these positions, but it's there. So if somebody is following him, they see this, and it's a pretty good company. And I say that from having looked at the company myself, not as a place to work, but wondering why Kevin wanted to work there, and give up his consulting business. So it really is. There is an advantage to all of this. Okay. Questions? All right, it's a little after 10. I'd like you guys to spend about the next hour and a half, next half hour, starting your company research. And Sarai, do you really want to look at something besides the?
No. Okay. I already actually am starting it.
Good. Excellent. So I'd like you to work on that for a while. And I promised all of you that I'd have some markups on your resumes and cover letters that I have. And I'll be working on that while I'm here as well, because I want to get that out of the way. So Tim, when you hear this, we're going to take a short break. I'll probably come back online in about an hour and a half to close out the class. So I'm going to take a pause in the recording right now. Okay, I'm going to resume recording again, because I think how is the company research going?
Good.
Okay.
I decided to do it on Rice Broadband.
Oh, you did? Okay. You did.
They're
Okay.
actually hiring. I looked on Woodward Governor's website to see if the job was still there, but it's not. So I'm like, yeah. Oh, dude.
Yeah, there is the issue with basing this on a current position.
Mm-hmm.
You're really taking a snapshot. That's why we just want you to to pick thing, knowing that the chances are when you actually are going to be in a position to make the application, it's not going to be available.
Yeah.
But it gives you, the whole idea is the practice. And quite frankly, the way people are proposing and helping people get jobs these days, it's not like it used to be. There are lots and lots of qualified candidates. Now they're growing fields. Medical is growing rapidly. That is
Insanely rapidly.
yeah. That is something that is well recognized. I have seen on television commercials for Pima Medical Institute, which trains MAs, and their opening line, after they get through the little stuff, are you looking for something better? Why You know, I'm so sick and tired of cleaning bathrooms, blah, 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 that sort of thing. Yeah.
My own.
But nonetheless, what it does then, it says in the next, I can't remember how many years, the next few years, there will be over 2 million new jobs in the medical field.
It's
So
insane.
that's a lot. And a lot of it has to do with the aging population. Because those of us that are over 65 consume about 80% of the medical care. And we're in terms of numbers, we're the fastest growing demographic. 10,000 people a day turn 65 in this country. A day. Yeah. So it's really a major growth area. And the other side of that, you don't hear as much of it, but IT is growing as rapidly, if not more.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah, yeah. It is. Everything is now computerized. And now we're going to see some more interesting things going on with the whole thing with Facebook and other social media. How do we prevent our customers' personal information from being extracted and used by somebody? I mean, Facebook sells that stuff for marketing purposes, but I don't think they sell social security numbers or addresses or, you know, that sort of thing. I don't think they do that, but they do, you know, sell a lot of information that they've collected. So, pardon? All the demographic stuff, yeah, that's typical. But they also look at preferences so that they can say, okay, Amazon.com, if you really want to, or Barnes & Noble or anybody else, if you want to sell these people books, they love to read whatever, because that's what they're saying on their Facebook account. So you can sell that information to the booksellers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of the others, and then they start targeting you. You know, and sometimes you actually fall right into it because there's a website called BookBub. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. BookBub. And what they do is every day they send out the deal of the day. And it's usually ebooks. So they've got them for you know, Barnes & Noble and Amazon, so Kindle and Nook. And they have them out there, and some of them are free. All you have to do is have an account with the vendor. And you can download these books for free, and they're usually available short term. So, you know, with my daughter getting married and moving to Australia and our other daughter living in Denmark, we figure we're going to spend a lot of time on airplanes. So I've been downloading free books into my my tablet, which has a Nook and a Kindle application. So I've been downloading those things into my tablet, figuring that you know, it's a heck of a lot easier to carry an 8-ounce tablet than a stack of books. Or even just a laptop. Yes. My wife just bought a mini computer, you know, one of the, yeah, it's an Asus. It's about this wide. It's about an 11 or 12-inch computer. It's really light, really lightweight.
The keyboard's messed me up, though. So.
Yeah, the keyboard's a bit small. We probably, and there's no, we could get an external keyboard for it, but you know, we won't do that. We certainly wouldn't travel with such a thing. No. Besides, when you travel, you're not going to be. If you travel and your business is writing, you're going to take something you can write on. You're going to carry your laptop, you know. But you know, these things they work pretty well. So so we, you know, when we this sort of information gets handled. But with the whole mess with Facebook, I just was reading where Zuckerberg is now saying that they're going to implement some changes, which means programming. And now several of the other social media, like Twitter, is now realizing that they have to start screening out some of the crap that was going on, like during the election, where apparently, and it looks like it's pretty, not just apparently, it looks like it's definite. We were having outsiders, Russians, meddling and in trying to influence the results of an election, which is absolutely unacceptable.
Totally not.
Yeah, and so so that's going to require people going through and doing a lot of work. And other platforms, different platforms like PayPal. PayPal is going to have to restructure itself. They're still using their original software when Elon Musk started the company. And they're a pain in the neck to deal with as far as I'm concerned. So they're going to have to do something, or they will eventually be lost in the other means of payment.
Well, with like Samsung has a pay thing and Google has a pay thing now. And
I just don't feel like PayPal's like a safe thing. I've never used it or anything. It just doesn't feel safe to me.
Yeah, and they yeah, we had trouble with them one time, and we don't use them anymore.
their customer services. Something that you do not want to mess with.
Yeah, yeah. So, and there again, customer service. When you have a limited universe of choices, customer service is less important than if you have a large universe of choices. Airlines are a prime example of that. I will never get on another Frontier flight. No. Never. Pardon?
It's the
Well,
only one that goes to
only one that was?
that goes to the UP.
Ah, okay.
Unless I want to drive from Minneapolis, St. Paul.
That's not a bad place to drive through.
Through, no, all the way to.
All the way to the Upper
Michigan.
Peninsula? Well, yeah. That's a little different. But, you know, as a place to drive through, that's not bad. But, yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the case. But, you know, they did a couple of things to me, and then they did something really nasty to my daughter. And I said, that's it. I will not darken your door. Yeah.
I did find out, though, that they're switching from Frontier being the only one because they've had so many things recently, I guess, that they're switching to Delta. Delta's going to do a flight from Minneapolis, St. Paul to Iron Mountain.
Well, and Delta's had its problems over the years, but they've cleaned up their act a lot, I understand.
And Iron Mountain, a hilarious airport, by the way.
Really?
One gate,
One gate.
one baggage claim, one door out, one door in. Security is literally two guys and a screen. Like, that's it.
Little bitty airport?
That's a small airport.
Like,
Yeah.
the airport is smaller than my dad's house.
That's a small
It's
airport.
insane. It's great.
Yeah. Well, those little airports are like that. But, the only thing smaller is we have some friends in Idaho that actually, they live in a community it's an airport community. They have a shared runway. Everybody has their own hangar.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
And he flies, in and out of there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. But again, customer service is what will kill them. We've heard all of the horror stories about United, but United is a big enough airline that while they're not immune,
Mhm.
and I don't remember if you remember, I don't know if you remember the United broke my guitar video. Some music, some musical performer, and I don't remember who, checked his guitar on United because he was flying from one place to another.
Yeah.
And when they got to the destination, the guitar was broken. The neck had been snapped. And it was in its case. I mean, and
Wow.
these cases are built to take a lot of abuse. And United basically said, no, we're not going to replace that. So he wrote a song and a video and put it on. United paid him.
Nice.
That is the correct response.
Yeah. United paid him for that. So the customer service is a big thing, and you can lose it. And I think that's where PayPal is going to fall apart. Is there'll be some people that will actually do a better job, and the customer service will be better, and then PayPal will either have to change to compete or disappear. And that's evolution. Some people, I was talking to some people about Amazon last week. I was talking to some friends, and this guy was asking what I thought about Amazon, and because this is all the stuff with Trump now attacking Amazon with falsehoods, actually, but nonetheless, there's all this going on, and I said, well. But the question was, how do you feel about them putting small businesses out of business? And I said, well, I'm not happy to see it, but that's business. Amazon is doing what every business is supposed to do, expanding its market and competing successfully. We just ordered some books from Amazon. They were supposed to be used. They were 1/4 the price that you'd buy in a bookstore. And they came in and they were brand new. One of them had a little fold in one corner. It was a paperback.
That's the best feeling.
Yeah. So they compete. And that's what their business model is. And so, yes, do I not like seeing the big box stores and the online people taking out small businesses, which were the mainstay of our economy for so long? Yeah. Do I feel like if I go to a local hardware store, even if it's a pseudo chain like Ace or Best or one of those, or going to a local hardware store where you walk in and the first thing that happens is somebody says, "Hi, can I help you find something?" Do that at a Lowe's or a Home Depot. "Hi, can you help me find something? I'm busy."
I'm busy. That's not my department.
Right. I'll call somebody for you. Yeah. Go wait on aisle 13 and hope you don't die from dehydration before the help gets there.
Have you ever noticed that there's only like 3 employees in Home Depot, like at all times, and they're all at the cash registers? There's nobody ever out.
Yeah.
And if there is, it's
But
one
they won't
guy
help you.
who just like shoots by.
Like
You can't get
that's not our department over there. You'll find Joe in
Yeah.
aisle 5.
Oh wait, he's not working today.
Oh,
Until you take a piece of wood to their saw and start cutting it to the dimension you want,
you can't.
then they show up.
Yeah. You can't do that. You're not other.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't around.
Yeah, that's right.
What else did you want?
I've been sawing wood longer than you've been alive, son.
Yep. I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. But yeah, right. So anyway, but let's go back to a couple of other things. We started talking about social media, and next week your discussions about social media. So yeah, you do, and it doesn't come on board until I say. But the social media is very, very useful. and it's very, very risky.
Mhm.
The use of social media as a way of networking is actually, to me, the most important purpose. Um, we all have reasons that we're on social media. We joined Facebook many years ago for the simple reason that our daughter was in school in Europe, and that's how we knew what she was doing, so that we could see her posts. And she wrote some very, very good posts. She also learned at that point that if she didn't want us to know something, she stopped. She didn't post on it. But nonetheless, there's a reason for that, and there's a reason for using social media, and networking is one of those reasons. You want to be careful what you post. The thing to remember is that employers will search social media now. If they get down to, they won't search it on every application, obviously, but they'll get down to the last group of people that they might be considering for interviewing. And then somebody will go on and see what have these guys been posting on social media. And if they've been putting out tirades about politics or, any other thing like that, they're likely to find themselves not being asked to come for an interview. If they are simply reposting a whole bunch of junk from other people, they also might not find themselves interviewed. That depends on the taste of the person seeing it. So if they do things that are totally inappropriate, like talking about how hungover they were after their binge drinking episode last weekend, they're also that's going to be a negative. Well, yeah, and that's right. Even if the guy looking at it also binge drinks, he's liable to look at it as a negative. So it really, you have to be careful, and you have to be very, very conscious of the fact that it is part of your identity. And my rule of thumb is never put anything on, because I use LinkedIn, and I rarely touch Facebook. I think the last time I posted anything on Facebook was 5 years ago, and I posted pictures of my daughter's wedding, because that was in Denmark, and I wanted all of our friends back here to see some of the pictures. So that was it. I think that was my last post on Facebook. But if what you're doing is posting pictures of your kids, we have a friend who they had been trying to have kids for years, couldn't. They finally adopted, and then as is often the case, she got pregnant, and so they had this baby. And so she's posting pictures of the kids and the kids interacting. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's exactly what she does. She's very, very careful about what she posts, because her job as a financial analyst is to have people trust her. And if you post things that make you look untrustworthy, do you want them handling your money? The answer is, probably not. You don't want them doing that, because that's not appropriate. But we have others that we finally. My wife looks at Facebook more than I do, but mainly because we have lots of friends that post. One of the reasons I don't look is I don't have to.
She lets you know.
She lets me know when there's something I need to know. And but she has unfriended a number of people because of their posts were just awful. So an employer seeing that and seeing a long string of profanity and a lot of other kinds of things, they're not likely to be impressed. So you have to be careful. Now, somebody asked me one time if it's a deficit not to have a Facebook account. I think Sarai did. The answer to that is I don't think so. You might frustrate a person trying to figure out if they can take you off the short list for an interview, but I don't think it's actually going to hurt you. And I think more and more people are opting out of using too much social media. I think that things going on at the top of our government right now are giving Twitter a bad name. I've never been
Never used it.
well, I haven't either. I've never seen a point in it, but it is a way you can, in a very short, sweet way, if you do it right, get a message out. If I were a politician, which I will never be, I might use it to say, we're voting today on or whatever on some issue, and doing some sort of quick, try to get a pulse of what my constituency thinks. And then hopefully listen to that, recognizing that, of course, only the people with the strongest opinions are going to respond. The people who don't care won't. And usually you're going to get the extremists on either end of whatever issue. But nonetheless, it would be a way of doing that, of saying, okay, I'm having a town hall on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at. That's a good use of a very short and easy bit of communication. And Twitter's really trying to change. I guess they doubled the number of characters recently to 280 or something like that in one tweet. And then they're also, there's Twitter polls now. I was just reading something, somebody mentioned a Twitter poll, and I'm sitting there, I think it was Twitter actually, is looking at stopping that.
Yeah.
Because apparently it's getting to be a pest.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, these things, and again, more opportunities in the field of IT. How are you going to stop these things? How are you going to write routines that will recognize these things? So, it makes you wonder about that. But a social media presence is potentially useful. Many businesses will have them because people look. And businesses in general are pretty careful about what they put out. And with good reason. You have an image. In a business, you have a lot of different, people talk about shareholders as though they're the only real constituency of a business. And in reality, the public is a big constituency of any business, because that's where your customers come from. So they're pretty careful about what goes out on their social media. But you've got professional Facebook, Twitter, all the social media, and every time I turn around, there seems to be a new one. I can't keep up with them at all, and part of it's because I have no interest in them. But another part is that I wonder how soon we're going to see these things become more important as communication channels. I mean, when email first came out, everybody said, "Oh, what do you need that for?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, if you don't have an email account,
You don't have anything.
that's right, you don't
You're not
exist.
connected to the
Yeah.
world.
You don't exist, which is which is kind of interesting, you know. And I just really have a question as to where it's going to go. I mean, right now when we see all this stuff with Facebook, it makes you understand that they're evolving. Hello, Amanda.
Hello, good morning. How is everyone?
Good morning.
We are here.
We're here. What class is this?
This is CSS 299,
Ooh,
professional
that's
development.
how you learn to get that job.
Yeah, we're
That
working on
J-O-B.
That's you.
Yes.
that reason for being here.
Yes. Fantastic. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm here to pass these out, and Cody's already done one. But Mike has not done one. So April is National Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. And so I'm passing these out and asking everyone to think about what role they play in preventing child abuse and neglect. And so if you could fill this out and put it on our wall, that would be much appreciated. If it's too intense, please don't do it. Just put it, there's a blank for blank spots. Sometimes it's a trigger for people. So we all play a role, and I just really wanted everyone to think about what their role is and how they can help prevent child abuse and neglect. And then I want to tell you that these people have been placed in pre-grad status. What that means is they have 18 to 21 credits left until they graduate. Yes. So in a couple months, we'll be talking about them as graduates. Alex Reeves, Chris Finkel, Rhonda Jimenez, Alex Sanchez, Guadalupe Godoy, Dion Watt, and Mackenzie Murphy are all pre-grads. Yes. And our grads for this month are Ron Johnson, Paige Primer, and Ashley Lathrop. They've all graduated. So,
Ashley graduated. Great.
she did. She did. She did.
Cool.
So when you're finished with these, just go staple them on the wall when you have a minute. Please and thank you. The wall is located in education on the other side of my windows. So thanks. Thanks for letting me
Thank you,
interrupt.
Amanda. And thank you for doing this too.
Yes, yes. Bye. Goodbye. Enjoy your class.
Always.
Weird to see you both here during the day.
I know,
Yeah.
right? It feels weird.
Yes, it does. Anyway, okay. So I guess the bottom line is I think that these days we need to have some sort of social media presence. If nothing else, what you want to do is to have someone who says, well, where does Cody sit on social media, and go search it out and find out you have a Facebook account. He looks at it and says, oh, that's boring. Okay. Yeah.
It probably will be.
Nothing. Well, yeah. I mean,
I don't
and
vote
it
for
probably
them.
ought to be to most people. The only people that your Facebook account really should matter to are your friends and family.
Mhm.
And you know, but I've seen it. I've seen them cost people their jobs by putting stupid
And
things.
friends. Jobs and friends.
And friends, yeah.
Sometimes even family ties. I've seen people that get in some big arguments because something they posted about something just out of the blue, and family members get really hurt or agitated, or friends get mad, and you lose all that. And then of course it's not good for jobs either,
No.
because they're like, yeah, that's definitely not something that we want.
No, and people will publish pictures of themselves in
Basically
The
nothing.
weirdest
Yeah.
situations.
weird situations,
The
or something they
situations
think's cool. And
should
I
not be
wonder,
public.
what they're high on when they think such and such is cool.
Uh-huh.
Because it's totally inappropriate. My daughter had a friend in college who posted a picture of herself wearing only cellophane tape.
Wow.
Her friends caught it within minutes of it going up and said, get it down.
Mhm.
She did. But once it's out there, I mean, you take it down on Facebook, it's not gone.
Nope, it's on the internet.
Somebody saved it.
Well, and Facebook doesn't, Facebook doesn't delete that stuff.
On
So-
servers.
It's there, you know, once you put it out there, somebody can find it.
Mhm.
And, you know, if you have to post a picture of something, put up a picture of a puppy.
What I
Yeah.
do.
Nobody, nobody.
Family get
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
My little brother's puppy.
yeah, right. But when people see that, they see, well, this is, you know, okay, nothing inappropriate here. Check off that box, and then head to, you know, what are the others? You know, what are they posting on Twitter? And if all you're posting on Twitter is, you know, does anybody have any idea where I can find a, you know, you know, some product you're looking for? Well, that's
Hey,
okay
I need
too.
recommendations for a hardware store.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. If so, the use of that needs to be carefully considered. The other thing that you have to remember is that anything that goes on the internet, you no longer control. In fact, my rule of thumb has always been, if I don't want anyone to misuse something that I have written, it does not get posted anywhere. I don't send it as an email. And there's another rule, because it's easy to get on Facebook when you're really mad about something. And you just want to say, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard, blah, 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 blah. You know, before you hit the send button or the post button or whatever it is, give it 10 minutes thought.
Yep. Go for it to work.
if
And-
you're really
Really
mad, write it in
want
the
this out to the
Microsoft Word
world?
document and then delete it. Like,
Well, that's another one. That's another good way to do it. If you really are mad about something and you want to let off steam, do exactly that. Put it in
because
a
then
Word
it's just
document, delete it, or better yet, overwrite it.
Yeah.
Because even deleting it, people forget to throw it out of their trash, and I'm not convinced that it disappears anyway.
Still on her drive.
Yeah. So, yeah. So think about it.
then mine is full of old assignments.
Yeah. There's
But
software out there
think
that
about
people
anything you post. Is there a reason I should care? Now, I will warn you that there is nothing you can write, say, or do that someone who wants to misinterpret and interpret negatively can't.
that is
Can
true.
we prevent that? No. What we can do is limit the range whereby that can occur.
Yeah.
And because I've had things, even in business, I mean, in an internal document. Many years ago in the pharmaceutical industry, I wrote an analysis of problems with one of our products. And we had a multitude of them. And then we had a meeting about that product at the FDA that I, as the project manager for that drug development project, went to. And the head of the Division of Biologics at the FDA pulled a copy of my memo out of her folder and said, "What did you mean by this?" And at that point, I realized that one of my colleagues had sent that to her.
Really?
Not to do anything to me. It was out of stupidity on his part. And I said to myself, note to self, Norman does not get any more memos. And we had to talk about it.
it.
And we had to talk. Fortunately, I was able to explain, you know, and she was able to get past her unhappiness.
This is actually a library, so we have a media center for our students, library, so good little area here.
And
So, yes, I'm more on the business scale myself.
and so you know you have to remember that once it's out, once you hit the send button, you no longer are in control. So if you want to, you know, so these days people will look for anything they can to rule out a potential employee, and they do it all the time.
It's just gonna get even worse with how technology's going.
I have
Yeah.
never been so happy that I use a surname on Facebook.
It's
Except you can be tracked. They can figure out who you are if people want to.
I know they can,
But they have to want to.
yeah.
I mean, depending on what you write, someone may decide to. But I remember the story of a person who was posting under a pseudonym on Facebook, and he was really a sick individual. He would post nasty remarks about people who had posted about the loss of a loved one. You know, he would make nasty remarks and, oh, they deserve to die. They were old. Blah. You know, that was one of the milder ones. Yeah, I know. That was one of the milder ones. This went on for a long time, and finally somebody who apparently had the knowledge decided to figure out who this guy was, and arguably, you know, this is not what he should have done, but he decided he was going to find out who it was and identify him on Facebook. It was a Facebook thing. And it turned out he was a guy that was just a security guard at some company, and who knows what his motivation was. But
just thought he was anonymous. And
yeah, thought he was
write
anonymous
whatever.
and could say whatever he wants. So he was, whatever satisfaction he got from doing that. So he posted all these things, and then this guy posted and said, here's who it is, here's his address, here's his other email. And the guy got fired.
Mhm.
He got harassed. Then the other trolls were threatening him, which is another thing that I have no use for. And ultimately committed suicide.
Wow.
So the lesson there is, even if you think you're anonymous, all you have to do is think about WikiLeaks.
Yep. I was gonna say.
That's not who did it, but that's all you have to think about.
Yep. There's always a way around to find
Yeah.
information on technology.
If you have the tools to do it and the persistence and patience.
Mhm.
So anyway, social media, you know, I have nothing personally against it. I just don't use it. I don't see any reason to use it. So that's you know, a lot. So we'll talk perhaps a little bit more, but I'd like to go really and urge. Let's see. I want to go back here. Course media. I'd like to urge you to really look at a couple of videos. I don't know if you looked at all the videos from last week, week 1, but what'd you think of those?
There were a couple of them that were like very, very, very droning.
Mhm.
And I kind of blank faced at my screen for a little
Some of
while.
them you can
But
tell that you're like, oh, reading from script.
Uh-huh.
I can
Uh-huh.
see reading that teleprompter.
Yep,
Um,
you've done this a few times, reading from your screen on your computer right there in front
But
of
no,
you.
definitely useful, especially with my cover letter.
But
Yeah.
it
I'm
was, it
horrible
was
at cover
useful.
letters, so.
There was a lot of information on that.
Yeah.
It was-
The setting aside the format, it's the information that really that I find good. If we look in week 1, if we look at all of these documents, resume documents here, we've got technical versus transferable skills worksheet. Did you guys look at that?
I looked at it, but I did not do it.
Which one?
It's the technical versus transferable skills worksheet. Okay, so let's take a quick look here at it. Technical and transferable skills. Well, technical skills obviously are the skills that you learn that are specific to a field or to a job. In Emily's case, technical skill would be phlebotomy or vital signs.
Drug admin.
Yeah, and drug administration. plus the various ClearWave tests that you've seen. In your case, technical skills would be troubleshooting, software problems, or helping your incompetent instructor set up a microphone that works.
Or why is my computer doing this?
Yeah, right. Those are all technical skills. Transferable skills are those that really are applicable across any field. They have to do with customer service is a transferable skill. Computer guys used to have a horrible reputation for customer service. And many of them are pretty bad at it because they relate better to their computer than anything else. And that's just it. But you can't run a business with people who have no customer service skills. All people who have none. So we've got that. We've got the work style kinds of things that you have, your communications ability, all of these things. Your life experience can be considered a transferable skill, and all of the various things that you do that can be applied to anything. As I say, problem solving is a good one. Planning, I know people who can't plan their way out of an open sack, really literally. They have to be led. They're very, very, very skilled technically.
One of my good friends from high school is
Yeah.
she couldn't pour water out of a with instructions on the handle.
Yep. There are lots of those. The thing to do is think about. I would look at this document and study it. And the reason I would study it is because what you're going to find is you're going to see an awful lot of these things that you're going to self-identify as being skills that you have. And yeah, I know there's a skill, isn't there?
I don't have much skills. You all right there?
No, they're not. You're leaving me, okay?
Tim, I know you're not here on campus. What we're having is the roof of the building is being replaced, and that's the landlord's job. So they don't care about the fact that they've got jackhammers and impact drivers and half a dozen things going up there, and pounding and disturbing a class. So that's what we're laughing about. But if you go through this list and just think about what of this list you see that you can do, that you already have experience with, and think about that. Again, this checklist gives you something to consider emphasizing in your job application. We can identify the technical skills easily for any field, but the transferable skills are not something people think about very often. And so going through this list and thinking about them is useful for helping determine how you are going to project yourself in the workplace.
It's a long checklist.
It is a long list, and it contains a lot of things that you might not think of as transferable skills. Yeah, that was my reaction the first time I looked at this list. I said, "Holy smoke! I never would have thought about that."
It's just some of these are like, oh, those are like regular day-to-day things that I do. Oh.
That you do all the time. Yeah.
Or just randomly out of the blue and just.
Yeah.
Didn't think it would be that important.
And yet we need to think about them as being a part of how we're going to function on the job. Punctuality is a transferable skill. You don't usually think of punctuality as a skill. It's a trait, but that's what we have. Skills and transferable skills are work traits as well. That's what we bring into it. Attention to detail. Working in either medical or IT field, attention to detail is critical. And if you're not, it comes back to bite you every time. You get in trouble. But if you look at this list, responsibility, the ability to budget money. People don't think of that as a skill, but how many people do you know who think that a checkbook means that you're inventing money when you write a check? Really literally, whether there's money in your account or not.
It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. How many people do you know that do that or that appear to think that? Yeah.
They do that with credit cards.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's why so many people have so much credit card debt. Yeah. And there are some cases where it's reasonable. There are times when that's a necessity, but people who are constantly getting another credit card because they're maxed out on all their others.
Gotta get this credit card to pay for this credit card to pay for that credit card.
This one that was for this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a skill, but it's also a personality trait. And one of the things that you really want to do is think about when you go through a list like this. Think, gee, I don't see that I do this or that or the other. How can I? Is that useful for me to try and develop that skill? The answer is maybe, depends. Quite frankly, if you are an accountant, what you don't want to be is too creatively adventuresome on the job. Because pretty soon you get a new title, inmate.
I was gonna say, there's a line there.
Yeah. So, you want to be careful. It's fine to be creative. In fact, we all would like to think that we're creative, and quite frankly, all of us are in one way or another. Adventuresome, well, some are more so than others. There are none of these that you are less of a human being if you don't have them. They're just various personality, organizational, and other kinds of skills that can be applied across a wide range of positions. So, this exercise here is worth doing. If you don't really do it, you may want to consider it, or just look down the list. I mean, part one is to list these things strongly. Yeah. Want to put a rating, 1, 2, or 3, as to they strongly describe you, they somewhat, or they describe you to a less degree. So, and just think about that. Nobody's going to have all these as primary traits.
And if they do, they're lying.
Well, yeah, there is. That's a good point, Emily. Yeah, yeah, and some, perfectionism can be both a positive and a negative.
Yeah, depending on.
The true perfectionist is one who recognizes when he's gone as far as he can. The obsessive compulsive perfectionist never gets anything done because they can't do it perfectly. So there are some of these that have two sides to that coin.
That's my dad in a sentence.
Well, that's a lot of people. We had that problem.
Did you think about being on your house?
But
Yeah. Everybody has a goodly number of these, of what's on this list. And then some that they may think, okay, I'm not, for one, I don't think that, I've looked down here, one of the words on here is tidy. I don't think that that's one of my strong points because I can't be bothered. I can live in chaos.
yeah,
When it's
Organized
necessary,
chaos.
everything's cleaned up just fine. But for the most part, I just don't get obsessive about
Organized.
it. Yeah. So the and some of these are related terms. We've got candid and we've got frank. They are related, but there's some differences. Candid is basically an ability to look and express yourself clearly about your feelings. Frank has a point of a connotation of being so forthright that you're insulting. Okay.
Make sure you know.
I remember back when I was much younger, and when the hippies were going strong, one of the big things was honesty, man, honesty. And they would say insulting things. I'm just being honest, man.
Yeah.
At that point you think, well, honesty can get you a broken nose. If that's what you define as honesty.
That's honesty. Well, this is my fist with your face.
Yep. Here is my honest opinion
Yep.
of your honest opinion.
Yep. This is my honest.
And so there's a negative to that. Should we lie? Well, of course, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not lie. In our society, if you look at what we look at in terms of both civil and criminal law, lying can get you in trouble. If you lie under oath, that's a felony. But what's the question? The most famous question is, wife comes out wearing an outfit. Does this make me look fat? We know the answer.
Yeah. We just don't want to.
And sometimes it does.
Mhm.
But, at times it's better just not to tell, not to really sort of not be that frank.
Yep.
And not saying that you should ever lie, because once you get a reputation as a liar, you never lose it. So let's see. So you might want to look at that. It's a useful document, actually. Let's see.
A lot of those words they don't know, so I had to look them up.
I'm sorry.
A lot of those words they don't know, so I.
Oh yeah. Well, that's.
I don't want to go. Well, that sounds like something that I do, but I really don't want to know if it is or not.
Yeah.
Definition might change my mind on what it actually means.
Yeah. So there's some things here that I urge you not to bother with. There's also something called a career interview assignment that is not really part of this class, so ignore that. This week's videos, I haven't listened to all of them. Like, for instance, I haven't listened to the one on networking on Twitter. And part of that's because I don't use Twitter, so I don't care. But but I'm sure that it's useful. The one on networking on LinkedIn is really useful. Yeah. I figured you were on LinkedIn.
Also, we had a credit company. Getting on the military force. It's one of those steps that he made us do.
Well, that's good though. I really think that's wonderful. That they helped you really do
Explain
that.
what you should have on there and what kind of profile picture you should have.
There
Best
was some-
profile picture.
I'm talking about LinkedIn now. There are in the course media document in week 2, there are instructions for setting up a LinkedIn account if you don't have one. So it's worth doing. And they're right. You want to be careful about the picture you put, because you want the picture. If you're looking at LinkedIn is supposed to be for professionals, so you don't want to put a picture of yourself in a Speedo diving off a diving board, right?
Only if you want to go for a diving coach.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Then you want to catch yourself in the middle of a perfect form.
Yep. Perfect form, perfect splash.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to do it that way. But the issue is it should be a professional picture, which basically means a headshot. And and literally not below about clavicle level. So for women, that means that it's going to be whatever they're wearing, but not low cut. It's not a glamour shot.
It's not
You're
to
not-
draw
you're-
attention.
Yeah, you're not applying for a job on Broadway
Yeah.
or in Hollywood, but you want to look professional. If you are a guy, it's good. If your profile shot, it's all right to have an open shirt. Probably better even to have a tie. I mean, admittedly, you going into the tech field, the chances of you having to wear a tie very often aren't that high anymore. And in fact, during my time working in pharmaceuticals and biotech, I went from wearing 3-piece suits to wearing open shirts. And the only reason I wore open shirts instead of t-shirts was because I was the boss.
That's my profile right now, but I have to.
Oh, that's good.
I took it myself
A
because with a mirror shot, but
mirror shot.
I didn't know anybody to take it for me. But
Yeah, you can always find somebody else to do that, or you can crop it.
yeah,
Crop it, yeah. So anyway, questions or comments? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is continue working on your company research. Let's start exploring. Go way beyond just going to their website. Do Google search. Look at LinkedIn and see if they have a company profile on LinkedIn, Facebook. Just see what you can learn, and go broad. My view on these kinds of things is get more information and distill it, rather than less information and try to expand it, because you really don't have the tools for expanding. Okay. I have nothing else to add to today's class. So, questions or comments? All right. I will say one thing. I'm going to be trying to arrange for our last week to have mock interviews. So we'll get those set up and figure out what day of the week is best. And when you have a mock interview, you come in dressed for an interview.
you're right there.
I don't dress up.
I've heard that before. Almost everyone can to well enough for an interview.
I'm not talking about like a dress.
I know that, but I go to all my interviews in jeans and a t-shirt because that's what I own.
Well, it's time to expand your wardrobe.
And just have that one formal outfit.
Maybe you need to go to Plato's Closet. But because I don't think we have a
Little tiny short
I don't think we have a dress for success operation up here.
I'll just borrow some stuff from my mom. She's
Whatever,
It's the same size as I am.
then use that. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have anything.
But if you come in bell bottoms and a tie-dyed shirt because your mom was a hippie, that might be a mistake.
My mom's not a hippie. My mom is a drunk. Large difference.
Yes. Well, yeah. Somewhat. I mean, I know some former hippies who were drunks.
Yeah.
My grandparents are drunks.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Years ago, a friend of mine pointed out something that I hadn't thought about, but I think I must have made a similar decision. He said and he's about my age, he's a couple of years younger than me. He says, yeah, when I was in college, the hippies were on campus and I went and spent some time with them and decided they're losers. They're going nowhere. And so I just couldn't mess with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought, I think that was the conclusion I came to, but not quite that eloquently.
Not with those words.
Yeah. But yeah. So, and of course the hippies are now MBAs on Wall Street.
Yeah, that's true.
So anyway, I'm going to stop recording this. Tim, send me an email, and the word I want in there is Medan, MEDAN. So I will look for that, and if you have any questions, email me.